it's good to do this. I've never done a webinar before, so this will be really interesting. The truth is, when we came up with the name for this thing, the 5 things professional creatives and their managers need to know, it was an idea, and subsequently, I came up with more than 5 things. It was more like 10 things in the last couple days, and then actually I had 20 ideas I wanted to put in, but I couldn't put them all in. And I'll be honest, this deck is a complete mess. It's a train wreck, and I'm going to try and go through it. We'll see how many we get through. I actually only have 10 in the deck. If we get through all 10, I'll be amazed. But we have an hour. I'm hoping to have a Q&A at the end. So if I need to, I might truncate the whole thing and just leave some of the wisdom out of it. The whole point of this thing, though, is to talk about growing a creative role, of being a creative person in the world and getting jobs and improving on those jobs and developing the skills you need to do a really great job. I've been doing this for a long time. I've been working professionally for almost 40 years, well, 35 years. And I think, I've had a chance to see lots of different conditions. In particular, there is this popular idea of what a creative career path looks like. And almost every company, agency, studio, almost doesn't matter where you go, they're all based on this popular idea. So what we're going to talk about today a little bit is where that popular idea goes wrong and where it blows up most often. And also, I'm hopefully going to leave you with some basic tools that should help you, most of you, in your daily work. So I'm going to create just a little bit of context before we get into topic 1. The idea that when you first started, when your passion was first sparked, you might have been a kid. I was a kid, although I have lots of friends who were in college before it did, and some that were professionals already working before that sort of passion hit them. And when you're first bitten, it ignites something in you, and you start to express it through your art, whatever your chosen art is. And you encounter the first main barrier almost right away, and that is an annoyingly total lack of skill of any sort. So, we end up, but it's really important. This moment was really important because the way we proceed from this point sets the groundwork for everything to come. We have to get good at this thing before anything else can happen. And in this case, I'm using someone drawing as an example of this. But from the very beginning, we start setting patterns in our minds. The eye-hand coordination starts to take root, and we practice and practice. And there's this internal dialogue that goes on in your head as you do your work and as you improve over time. And your dialogue might not even be the right word because you never really speak. It's nonverbal, isn't it? You just see it. And you just know what's wrong, and so you change it. And this starts setting your skill set. This starts setting the way that you feel about your art and the way you interact with your art. This totally nonverbal flow is the foundation of your creative skill that you will then spend years developing. And the better we get at it, the more kudos we get, and the more excited we get, and the more chance we have to get a job. Years later, we become good enough that we can get a job. And it's at that point that we get to point number 1, and that's the wall. I call this the wall. The wall, you don't see it. It's an invisible wall, but it exists. Now, we talked about the fact that every company has a hierarchy of roles, right? And the implication is that if you stay with the studio or the agency or the company, long enough, this is how you will get to grow. And the wall looks a little bit like this. Well, I shouldn't say the wall. This is the hierarchy. This is the ladder. The wall exists inside this hierarchy, and it's invisible. And when you're on this side of it, a fresh-faced person entering the workforce, you don't see that wall. And in fact, most of us as creatives, we never really realize that this wall is there, but it's there. Your hierarchy in your company might not be as dense as this. This is like all the titles all stacked up. You might have, and I'm just using designers as the starting point, but you might actually be videographers. You might be something else that sets this whole thing up. But the wall sits in the middle of this. And I want to show you where that wall is, because it's where things break. And it's where there's a huge shift in the way you have to look at your career. But let me show you where that is. It's right about there. That's where the wall breaks. That's where it hits, right about senior designer-ish, associate art director-ish. It sits right in there. And why does it sit there? What is that? What's the relevance of this? Well, there are two different types of jobs that sit on either side of this wall. And maybe you can see the difference in looking at it like this, what that difference is. Really, you've got sort of different modalities here. On the one hand, you've got people who make things, and the other, you've got people who direct people who make things, right? And more specifically, it's more like this, hands and words. These are the sort of tools that each of these sides use. Now, really, if you want to visualize it even further, it kind of looks like this. You've got your hands in the clay, or you don't have your hands anywhere at all. It's just a whole bunch of words and you're on the stage. And this is a very interesting split, because often we don't acknowledge this split sufficiently. We don't realize that this split is really there when we're on the clay side of this equation, on the hands side of this equation. We see that continuum as this natural progression. Of course, we should all move that direction. The truth of the matter is, if you think about it, you spent years of your career, years of your life, non-verbally growing and building the skills and craftsmanship and methods to get great at this. And then you get really good, you get promoted up to a point and someone says, hey, you know what, you should start directing. And suddenly you're doing this. And you've spent no time figuring out what this is. You've spent no time using words. I just knew stuff. I never had to actually say anything. Transitioning from a designer to a director, an artist of any sort, musician, whatever role you may think. Filmmaking is a little bit outside because you have to work with other people often. But when you're an artist, transitioning to a director is a massive shift, because often what you find is you are skill-less. Often, maybe not less, but certainly nowhere near as skilled as you were as an artist. We've been so lulled into believing that directing is a natural progression from wherever we are as an artist that we sort of, we miss this whole idea that, until we're on the job, that we don't have the skills to do it. And at first, many of us don't even realize that, because as I say, we sort of think we can do it. Why couldn't we? I always knew in my head what I was supposed to do. Surely I can just say that and that's going to work. But that's not how it works at all, actually. Directing isn't like that at all. And initially, most of us feel emboldened that we can naturally, of course we can all direct. We see good directors. We've all experienced good directors, and they make it look really easy. And bad directors suck at it in such obvious ways that we feel like, well, I could do better than that guy. And you probably can with some practice. We often imagine, especially coming out of school tells us that the critique is the main platform for communicating about our work. And that's true when we're talking about the work, but directing is about so much more than that. And also expressing your vision. You're not always expressing your vision. A big part of directing is about getting other people to do that. So, what does the director really do? Well, really, it's about interpersonal relationships. It's about the people. It's about human behavior and psychology and motivation. It's about framing concepts in the context of storytelling. As a designer, are you a great storyteller? Are you a verbal person in that way? These are things you want to be thinking about as you project yourself outward in your career. You have to repeat yourself incessantly. Directing, it's like just one of these things. I don't know what it is. I used to get so impatient when I first started. I think I told everybody what the idea was. Why do I have to keep saying it over and over? It's like, that's life, man. You become a broken record on certain topics. And then, of course, you have to critique the work too, but that's a small part of what directing really is. The reason for this is that the director's art, the director's medium, isn't the art that you are good at. The director's medium is people. So the clay that you get your hands in are actually human beings who you interact with every day. That wordless director that's been in your head all these years suddenly has to speak in such an attenuated way that you can encourage a trusting young ego that maybe isn't that experienced, or a passive aggressive defensive ego. We all know those guys, right? But being able to interact with those people and encourage them and motivate them, or a gentle, insecure ego. We have to work with all these different kinds of people and help them all work together to do the thing. That is ultimately what directing is. How good are you at resolving interpersonal conflict? And it gets even more complicated than this, because, and this brings us to point number 2. This is often something that is a completely new, even alien experience for a new director. directing someone else's idea to the target. This is a weird feeling. It's a shock to most of us. As someone who has defined your creativity through your own voice and through your own hands-on skill, to suddenly have to encourage someone else's creative voice to fill the space. How do you do that? You know, it's motivating someone else to create work in their creative voice, not yours, is initially a really daunting challenge. As a director, you must accept that your creative team is not merely there to serve as your wrist. You know, it's like the worst art director in the world reaches down and grabs your mouse and starts showing you how to use the machine. You know, it's like that they're not there to do that. They're not just to take orders. It's to just make that 10% smaller, move that a little bit to the right, execute in the manner or style that you would. That's not how it works. These are all artists just like you were with their own creative voices, and you have to find a way to help them come to creative solutions that answer the strategy. Because at a practical level, the work that they produce is theirs. You know, you'll discover that the best work, with almost without exception, will come from their heads and not your head. Your artist holds the brush and she has to move it with her heart. Otherwise, it feels inauthentic and it's weak. I'm going to use a reference point here that you might find quite interesting. I do it. It helps simplify things. When you direct actors, it's a very different situation because, you know, especially for visual directors, because when you think about actors, it strips all of the sort of distraction away. It helps you focus on that human interaction because that's all there is, right? When you direct actors, you have no external design to critique. There's no sort of third element that you can all objectively look at and go, that should probably be changed. You know, you're looking at the person's face. It's that person that you're talking to that has to change, their personality and the way that they're projecting and this character. It's an interesting idea then to think, for those of you visual artists out there, who still feel a bit of a sting when you get a negative critique. It's interesting to consider what an actor must feel because they themselves are being critiqued. They need to have a really strong, robust sense of self-confidence to be able to deal with that. You know, those of us in visual arts, we sort of have the crutch of being able to distance ourselves by putting this object out there and go, yeah, that's not very good, is it? We need to work on that. It's not me, it's that, you know, and it kind of helps a little bit in some way. But let's get back, but that does illustrate this whole human interaction thing. So I want to talk about that just a little bit. There is something that a bad film or theater director does that is largely just absolutely abhorred by actors. And it's called delivering a line reading. Have you ever heard that term, a line reading? A line reading is when the director actually tells the actor how to say the line, right? Actually says it, you know, here's Johnny, say it like that, say, here's Johnny, you know, it's like, what are you doing? I'm sure he knows how to say the line, right? You know, a great director will never have to give a line reading. He will never have to tell the actor how to say the line. That's the actor's job. Instead, what a director will do, and this is a lesson for all of us, is the director will sit down with the actor and discuss the character, right? They will discuss the backstory, the context of the scene. They'll explore experiences in the actor's life that maybe could relate to the moment, or maybe the director will even sense a personal conflict in the actor that's limiting their performance and counsel them through it, sort of through therapy. Armed with the context and feeling and emotional therapy and the backstory, the actor is empowered to do his job and lose himself in the real emotion of the scene. And at that point, then the actor uses his own instrument, and whatever attributes that line of dialogue ends up having is truthful and honest and feels real, and it's nothing that the director ever could have imagined for himself. And it feels authentic because it's all contiguous and part of the character. So like you would never, like as a joke, you would never tell Joaquin Phoenix how to say a line. You would never tell Jack Nicholson how to say a line, or Meryl Streep, or, you know, Christopher Walken, or, well, you might actually tell this guy how to say a line. You might, or maybe this was the problem. Maybe someone was telling this guy how to say lines and it didn't feel authentic. I'm just putting that out there. The point is that this is true in every medium. I believe that all director and artist teams need to live under the same basic idea. No matter the medium, you can't give your designers or artists or other talent, you can't give them line readings. You have to let their own intuition and their creative voice fill the space. And your job is to guide them with the more strategic ideas, the backstory and context. In this case, maybe requirements and strategy and insights and inspiration, even emotional counsel. Periodically you have to work somebody through something emotional that they're dealing with, and eventually they find a great answer. What does a line reading look like in a design sense, just out of curiosity? I can show you one thing that is absolutely a line reading, and we've all probably heard this one. Make the logo bigger. I think you need to make the logo bigger. Okay, look, that's a line reading for a designer. The truth is, you've just solved the problem by saying make it bigger. Did you really mean make it big? Was that what the problem was? No, the problem wasn't that the logo was necessarily too small. It's probably that the logo was not important enough. And maybe functionally or strategically, you're hoping that that the company will become more recognized. And you really want that logo to stand out more. That's a rational, strategic thing to say. I want the people to know really that this is coming from our company. I don't feel like this design is showing it. Now, size, proportion, color, positioning, these are the designer's tools. This is the designer's job to figure that out. And there are 100 ways a designer can do this besides making the logo bigger. All right? So if you're giving feedback, think about that. If the designer is actually confused, sure, you need to counsel them and offer some suggestions, but be humble as you do that, because this is their job you're doing. And this is true of all executives and managers. If you're giving feedback to your creative team, focus on the strategic reason that a change needs to be made, not the actual change or the solution that you want, because that's their job. And surely they'll come to something better than you would because they're more experienced at that than you are. All right, so another way that line readings tend to look is this. And this is a little bit related to the first topic too, the wall, and where we lack experience as new directors. Something that happens when you're starting directing is that you feel a bit powerless. You sort of struggle with, like, what am I supposed to do? How do I talk to these people? How do I give them direction? I'm not kind of getting what I want. And at the same time, I'm not sure how to do that without like actually doing it for them. And so you sit down at like what I call your comfort tools. For me, that's like Photoshop or After Effects or something. And for other people, it's going to be like InDesign, or these are all Adobe products. I'm not trying to pitch Adobe here, but anyway, whatever. So, and it feels so good. It feels so good to fall back on your comfort tool, to sit there and go, I can click the buttons now and I know exactly what I'm supposed to do. Like I'm back in my world. I'm back in my element because I didn't know what the hell I was doing before. But when you hand a designer a piece of work that you've designed for them and said, do it like this, it's another line reading, okay? The truth is, you might also need to just give them some reference. And whether you find reference online or from the art world, or whether you create some reference yourself, that's valid. I understand that in terms of giving reference. But again, that's reference. That's not the actual work. You need these people to do the work. So sometimes it feels a little bit like this, to be honest. When you're directing, you feel like, I'm in a straitjacket. I don't know. What am I supposed to do? I just have to use words. I really want to get involved. But the truth is, once you spend years doing this and you become more comfortable with the whole topic about human interaction and what that is, you realize you're not in a straitjacket at all. You have tons of tools suddenly, and you realize that you can motivate your team and get great work out of them when you need to. But with all this talk about hands-off, I hope I haven't sort of misled you to believe that a director does not need a solid foundation in hands-on skills. Now, I've seen a lot of different kinds of directors. I've seen directors with lots of hands-on skill in their background, and I've seen directors with very little. And the truth is, just in my anecdotal observation, the directors that have hands-on skill in their background tend to be better as directors. The reason for that is that I think they understand what the team is going through intimately. They know the unique challenges that they're facing. They know how hard to push them and what's reasonable to push for. Conversely, somebody that maybe doesn't have hands-on skill in their background is less sure about that. They can push too hard and upset the team. They don't understand the nuanced challenges. And you know, the other thing, you have to instill confidence in your team. And when you lack hands-on skills, sometimes that's difficult. Creative staff are a cynical bunch. And when there is a client or a director who lacks hands-on skill in their background, that's a slippery spot there, because they're the ones that often get lampooned. You know, when people are out making fun of clients that don't know anything, you know, that's like an old caricature, right? Authority without experience. And we sort of live in that world. And I don't know why we are so cynical. Well, I sort of do. But you know what's funny? I was looking for some pictures of designers in stock art libraries. And I thought, oh, I just want to put a couple pictures of designers in here. And the funniest thing I came across, I realized, like, why is it that every single picture I found of a designer looks like they're humoring us? Like, look at this. You know, oh, looky here, it's Mr. Make the logo bigger. Okay, what do you want? You know, you know, I'll just sit here and smile while you display your complete lack of experience. Sure, you know, what is it? Every single one of these pictures was, I'm not even going to make eye contact with you. Just talk and tell me what you need to tell me. Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah. Mm-hmm. You have no idea what you're talking about, do you? Yeah, it's cool. It's cool. Yeah, it's okay. I'm going to ignore everything you're saying anyway, and then I'm just going to design something and you're probably going to like it. Why are we like this? You know, I mean, but it's true. It's just this thing. I mean, like, I didn't find a picture of a designer that didn't have that added. Maybe it's me. Maybe I'm the insecure one and all these pictures look like this, but I'm sorry. Anyway, okay, hold on. There is a reason that creatives tend to be more cynical than other departments or other groups in your company. Did you know that? There is a reason, and that leads us to topic number 4. Topic number 4 is navigating the corporation. You already feel cynical just from that title. But this is serious, because all creative jobs exist in a company. You know, creative people hate the idea of selling out. We're very idealistic, and the idea that, oh, he's a sellout, whatever, you know, it's like and yet every one of us does, because we want to make money doing what we do. And it's all, the man is part of our business. That's just what it is. And we all have to just be comfortable with that reality. But many directors spend years butting their heads against this reality. That the truth is, navigating the corporation on behalf of your creative team is a functional part of the job. And we don't like to do that. That's not who we are typically at our base nature. You know, executives and managers, there are a few of you on this call, and some of you work with creative teams. And you're probably familiar with all the fear, uncertainty, and doubt that seems to plague the creative teams, right? You feel like they make unrealistic demands that are disconnected from the realities of what it takes to run a business. You know, they complain when things change. They always look on the dark side whenever the company grows or changes. They never seem to see the positive. But you need to know something. Your creative teams are not just irrationally whiny. We behave this way because creatives, by and large, really are victims of the corporate world, okay? Like, there's a reason we do creative work and not, say, other things, you know? And we get carried along for the ride. You know, there are all these other roles in the corporate world whose job skills happen to dovetail with running a business. Right? I mean, like salesmen, they can sell you anything. We need more money in order to do the thing. It's like, oh, that sounds like a great idea. Let's do it. You know, I'm sold. You know, the strategy guys come up with this really brilliant background and strategy for basically saying that, they need longer schedules at the head of projects to be able to do what they do. And they're very convincing because they have data, operations, like nothing would happen without them. And every, executive understands the importance of that. The finance guys can actually show, well, here's how much more money you would make if we had that new accounting system. It's like, what do creatives do? What do? We pick colors, and that's kind of cool. It's not millennial pink, it's coral. Well, I mean, it's kind of sad, but the truth is, but this is where a director who takes this to heart can make a huge difference in the way the creative teams are respected and are defended in the organization. You've got to defend everything from the work that they do to the budgets and time, the domain. Often other teams will want to encroach in and tell them how to do their job. It's like, hey, like I said, the designer's job is to design. Don't tell us to make the logo bigger. Things like that. All of navigating the corporation on behalf of your team is critical, and you're responsible for that. Some of you might feel the burden at this point, as I'm describing all of this, the burden of doing work that you really don't love, that you really wouldn't love to do. And I think for that reason, I've got number 5 here. Don't be too eager in your quest for advancement. Don't be too eager to leave behind the tools of your art, the tools that made you love what you are doing. Because in many ways, that is what directing results in. And yet, and also if you're a manager, don't force others to. There's a way to work around this, and I want to describe this, but I totally get why everyone is driven to make that leap. Because that standard hierarchy exists, right? We've got this thing, and this is what's in front of us. This is how I grow. The reality is that creative control and compensation are all linked to that hierarchy today in almost every company. So of course, that young creative, that talented young designer is going to want to progress and earn more and have more creative freedom. So of course they're going to want to make that leap. They're given no other choice. I would like to point out that Paul Rand and Dieter Rams and others, they were designers for their whole career. And I think in some way in our modern era where design has become sort of a function of UX and so many other things, we've sort of minimized what that role really is. And I think it's really important that we find honor in that role again. The truth is, some people like to work independently and they're really good at what they do. Why don't we encourage that? Why don't we create roles that allow that person to grow and not have to change jobs holistically? So think of it this way. Let's expand this, and let's say we've got this designer and he's worked his way up. He's a senior designer. He's pushing on being an art director now, and we're sort of like, but it's really not who he is. It's not his makeup. He's not verbal. He's visual, and but he's really good, and he's really good in interpreting what the stakeholders need. Now, a person like this is going to sit at this spot for maybe a year or two before they're going to start getting really impatient, and they're going to say, I need to find another way to do this. I need to move to another company or something. And what a waste to lose some brilliant person. What a waste of talent to lose this person just because we haven't come up with a system to keep them happy, to give them bloated titles where they're not actually very good art directors. They hit the Peter principle and they kind of suck a little bit, but at least they're still here. Why not encourage them to do what they do best? So look, here's a proposal. Well, first of all, let the people that want to direct. But then there are these people that, we need to create a new parallel path for people who are going to grow their talent. They're going to grow their responsibility and their impact. These people might work mostly alone, sort of like a la Paul Rand. They might be able to take more projects on their own. So we create this alternate path that has new strata for a designer who's able to increase these things and measure them out. So this is really important. You need to, if you're a creative in a company, you kind of wish this were the truth, and you sort of like directing doesn't really feel like the thing you want. You'd rather work on smaller projects that you own and can lead. talk to your managers about this and see if you can get them to buy into this idea. Well, I'm working on that with my team. It's not easy because there are some complications. Mostly the complication comes in, how do I represent myself to the outside world? Am I a designer at X level, which is like pretty high actually in our world? What does that mean in the real world? When I put my title on LinkedIn, who's going to know what that is? That's the biggest wiggly thing we have right now. But in terms of compensation and creative control and all the things that really mean something in the world, this is what we need to do. We need to figure this out. I'm going to move on. That was number 5. I'm going to move on now to the you're in complete control of your destiny speed round. So we're going to go through a few topics pretty quickly here that are super useful tools that will hopefully help you in your daily job. Okay, so I'm going to try and pound through these fast. I don't know how. We'll see. We'll see. I suck at going fast because I like to talk. Okay, here we go. Boom. The first one is not showing up on screen. No, there it is. So like I said, I was still building this deck like 5 minutes before I started this thing. So what does no mean? Look, you're going to get a lot of no's in your life. No is the most common answer you're going to get, no matter what your idea is, no matter what it is you're trying to pitch or what you're trying to get done. You're going to hear them a lot. And no is depressing. No hurts your heart. It extinguishes your passion. No sucks the wind from your sails. So many great ideas that are in your head that you still see, that are still crystallized, they die with no. But I have a secret that I hope will turn that around for you. In reality, in the business world, a no is only a no until it's a yes. All right? And I say that because you have the power to turn those around. Again, this is all about you're in control, right? That's what we're talking about here. So the only reason you will ever hear a no is because there's something you haven't done yet. There is something you haven't said, some proof you haven't shown, something you haven't done. There's something you still have to do to turn that around, because there is a recipient that you're trying to get a yes from who just doesn't yet share your vision. Now, if you don't look at no as the end, but only one step in the process of getting to yes, it's much easier to deal with. And that's important because the second side of this is that knowing that you have the ability to turn a no into a yes, it keeps you calm and keeps you from feeling victimized. It gives you the confidence to be able to stay creative. And this is what's very important, because you have to be a problem solver. It allows you to stay creative, think logically, and solve those problems so that you can eventually get to this. And the truth is, by continuing to push and meeting resistance, your idea might change, it might morph, it might pivot. But at the end of the day, it's worth it to get this thing to turn into a yes. As long as that vision is true for you, and it's just not true for that other person, you just have more work to do. Okay, so a no is only a no until it's a yes. That was number 6. Number 7, get the job you want. All right, so look, a lot of people have lost their jobs in this whole COVID situation, I know. And also, like, every job we have today, even if you work for EF or other places, this isn't the last job you'll have. You'll get other jobs. And we all have this idea of a dream job that we wish we could get, right? So I want to talk about that for a second. How do you get a great job? Well, naturally, we find the job listings online, we submit our resume, and then we sit back and wait for those calls to roll in, right? That's how it works, right? No, that is not how it works, not at all. Because basically, when you send your resume to those job posting things, it's like you are one piece of paper in a big stack, and you're lucky if anyone even sees you. That little piece of paper ain't going to be able to do a whole lot to sell you. You can do a little bit, but that's not how. I almost never gotten a job that way. I got one of my first or second jobs in my entire life was done that way, and every other job was done differently. And in fact, the people I hire tend not to be that way either. So what do you do? Well, a lot of people would say you work with recruiters, and because they have access to great opportunities and they're trained to make good matches. And I'm not going to be quick and just go, nope, that's not how you do it. Because the truth is, you can get great jobs working with recruiters. And I know a few really, really good recruiters out there who do really good work. But at the end of the day, this is about being in control of your destiny. And you're not any recruiter's only client. And even as a company hiring, you're not their only client either. The only person who will look out for you is you. So we need a solution here that's going to allow you to do this in addition to any work you're doing with recruiters, okay? So here's my strongest recommendation. Research your top 5 favorite companies. Could be 3, could be 2, it could be 10, but probably not 10. I bet you don't have 10 favorite companies. So find those top 5 maybe, and then find out who in that company leads that whole effort. Who is the person that that oversees that particular discipline that you're most interested in, and then reach out to that person personally and say, hey, look, hi, my name is Joel, and I'm a huge fan of you and the work you've done. I would really love to interview you briefly on a Skype call if you have time, and just get to know you and understand how you got to where you got and everything. People love to talk about themselves. So get them to talk about themselves. And the important thing is, you're not so much looking for a job right now. You're opening doors. You're meeting people. Most of the time, however, every company is looking for great people. Even if they're not hiring right now, they keep a list of great people they kind of wish they could hire. And then when that opportunity comes up, they'll take advantage of that. So you want to do that. You want to be one of those people that maintains a relationship with this person and always says, hey, guess what? I just got a job over here and I'm doing this. Have you ever worked with them? Do you know anything? And turn this person into a mentor, and they become a friend. This relationship is more important than the job listings, and you want to stay in contact, as I say. So that's one of the best ways I found to get jobs. It's about the relationships. Okay, number 8. This is a quick one. How to get a promotion. All right, so okay, you've got your job and now you want to grow and you want to do something new, and there's this job you kind of wish you could do, but it's currently not your job. How do you get it? It's actually really easy. And I don't know if anyone's ever told you this before, but you just basically do the job you wish you could be promoted into. You just kind of do it. Like, look, here's the thing. I have never promoted anyone that hadn't demonstrated an aptitude for that job. And how am I ever going to know that you've demonstrated an aptitude? If you just want it a lot, like, that's nice that you're interested in it, but I have to see you do it. There are a lot of people that sort of wait around for a permission slip. They sort of wait for a new title, and then they'll start doing that thing. Once I get the title, then I'll start. It's like, no one's going to give you a promotion to something if that's how you do it. If you do, you might not even like the job once you got it. It's hard to know. So here's the deal. Offer to help the people that already do that job. Offer to help. I know this is a little bit extra work, but trust me, it pays off. Everyone wants help. If you offer to help and say, I'd love to help, I'd love to learn a little more about what you do, you're going to start doing that, and they're going to see you doing it. And the whole point here is kind of to make your boss feel like, why the heck haven't I promoted this person already? They're doing the job, and almost every person I've hired is already doing it. And I always feel a little bit delinquent, like, I should probably promote that person. I just haven't done it yet, because they're kind of doing it and they've proven to me that they can. That's how you get a promotion. All right. Promise. Anyway, let's move on to topic number 9. Number 9, innovation. Now, what is that? What the hell am I talking about? Okay, look, we all want to make our mark on the world, right? And the word innovation gets thrown around a lot, especially in Silicon Valley and other places. And the truth is, when I talk to teams, and this is true for creative teams in particular, I hear that term a fair bit. Not everybody's innovating when they say they're innovating. I think it's instructive to understand what the feeling of innovation is, to help gauge whether you're doing it or not, because sometimes it's hard to tell. When I look back at all the projects I've done in my life, a few of them stand out as some that were more innovative than all the others. And they were the ones that I'm, to this day, the most proud of. They were just like, it worked. It was so cool that worked out. But I can tell you, without exception, every one of those projects in the moment felt like I was about to maybe fail miserably. Like it could have blown up in the most expensive and humiliating way. Like we were always on the edge, just going, this is not going to work. This is like, I don't know. I have no idea what I'm doing. This is a mess. Can we even pull this out? Like we were totally unsure of whether this thing was going to work or not. And those were the projects that we ended up making great stuff. Conversely, I've seen what innovation isn't. If you're working through your project and you feel like, I know what comes next, this is how it's done. You do this, and you do step one, and then you do step two. Trust me, you're not innovating anything. If you know what you're doing, you've done it before, and then therefore there's no innovation going on. Trust me. So the right feeling is that you're slightly terrified that you're going to fail and the whole thing is going to blow up. Then maybe you're innovating. The problem with this, of course, is that that's also exactly what actual failure feels like. So that sucks, and it makes it a little bit difficult. But the thing is, everyone says you got to fail, right? And that's true. But they sort of glorify failure when they say it. They say, don't be afraid to fail. That's what they say, right? What they leave out is, failure is excruciatingly painful, which it is. It's excruciatingly painful when you actually fail. But the truth is, you have to endure that failure, that humiliation. You have to endure the risk losing your job in some instances in order to fail, because you've got to be willing to figure out what worked and what went wrong. That's how you learn. Anyway, enough of that. This leads me to the last of the 10 things I wanted to talk about today. And I think we're doing good on time, but I'm not totally sure. Hey, Lydia, if you could just ping me and tell me how much time I have left, that would be good, because I, for some reason, don't even have a clock here. Anyway, so the last thing I want to talk about today is in some ways the most important of all. How to solve every problem you face at work. Okay? Now, that's a big ask, isn't it? Like, really? I can solve every problem I face at work by doing a thing? Awesome. Cool. But you can. Now, but I'm not talking about like we got to make the product better, or we're going to close that big deal. Like that's just doing the job, right? That's just your work. And I should say, I'm also not talking about abuse, any form of abuse. If you're in a situation in a workplace where there's anything that's really serious, that needs to be taken care of. You need to jump over whoever you need to jump over. It needs to be reported, and you need to extract yourself from that situation. I'm not talking about that extreme sort of situation either. The things I'm talking about are the 99% of the things that you abhor about your job, the things that make you want to leave the job, the things you take home with you and that your friends are sick of hearing you talk about, man. Like, it's personality problems with people at work. It's that there's no process in the company for doing this thing. Like, I hate every time we have to do this. I hate it because no one knows what they're doing. Someone who takes credit for everything that you do. Oh, someone who blames others for their mistakes. Like, hate that. Like, poor performers, people who suck, who make as much or more than you do. So look, these are all problems that just kind of hurt your heart and make you want to leave and make you disillusioned in your job. And I totally get that. See, what you kind of think is that there's a job out there that doesn't have any of those problems, right? It's a cool job with cool people in a cool company, and they have cool lunches, in a cool room that they have set up, like whatever. Like, let me tell you what, that doesn't exist. It'd be cool for a month, and then all those weird ass problems are going to start showing up, and you're going to realize it's just more of the same, man. It's like every job you will have in your life, doesn't matter if it's two people on the corner of a desk and you have a contract between you, or it's a huge conglomerate. Doesn't matter. They all have that. So, and the reality is that this is just what happens when we work closely and intimately with people we have no intention of marrying, right? So the sad thing, what makes me really sad, is that there are people who leave these jobs for these reasons, and they leave in the process incredible value on the table. They could have grown and become incredibly successful in that organization. They could have set up their careers for the future if only they could have solved those problems. But they don't. They leave, they go to another place, and then it starts all over again. And so you see people with on their resumes like 3 and 6 months, 3 and 6 months, 3 and 6 months, in all these different positions where they gave up way too early. And by the way, if you're at a company for less than a year, you haven't figured out how to do your job there yet. It takes about a year to understand a company. I'm just saying. So at least stay a year in a company. You should stay 2 or 3, to be honest, if you're really going to mine a company for what it can do for you and really tell you whether or not you have a future there. The problem isn't that these issues exist. The problem is that you don't know how to resolve them. And that's what I'm going to share with you today. I'm going to share with you the secret, okay? The secret of solving all your problems at work. Okay, I'm really talking this up, aren't I? So, okay, it's the 2 things. There are 2 things that you can use to solve all your problems. If you do these 2 things, I promise you, the problems that you face will magically resolve themselves. And I don't mean just bypass, I mean solve to your great personal benefit. So if you do these 2 things, sometimes it solves it all by itself. That's all you need to do, just those 2 things. And other times, you will be consulted. You will be invited into a quiet executive wing. You'll sit down in a soft leather chair, and there will be very important people in the room with you, and they will ask what they can do to fix your problems. And in fact, your opinion in that moment will be taken more seriously than at any other time in your employment. In either case, doing these 2 things will knock down all the problems that you have at work. Are you ready? Do you want to see what those 2 things are? Here we go. Hold on. Do great work and be patient. Now, I know what you're thinking. I'm with you. I get it. That was not what you wanted to hear. You wanted some sort of like, if you spot the body language of that guy, you can do this little trick and it makes him disappear. It's like you wanted some quick fix. That's not how it works. I promise. This is true. Together, doing great work and patience are a relentless force of nature in the world of business. And I want to explain why that is and what does this even mean. So, doing great work stands out as a beacon. It's a bright, shiny light in the world of business, right? When you do great work, everyone notices it. And the point is, it creates contrast with average work. That contrast, great work and average work standing side by side, that's the game. That's what you want to create. You want to create work that's good enough that it creates contrast with the average work. It's important because that contrast is what causes the corporate machinery to ask questions. Executives go, why did that project do so well this year and that one not so much? What caused that? Why did that team do so well this year and this team not so much? You want those questions to be asked, right? See, doing great work becomes your heat trail. It creates a line right to you. I should point out that you can't do great work if you're obsessed with all those little problems we were talking about before. If you're obsessed with those, it's like multitasking. You're going to do a mediocre job of both things. You really need to shed all of those all those issues you have with those problems. Ignore them. Here's the thing. If you're doing great work and being patient, you're going to resolve those problems anyway. So just be confident. No, that's all going away. Those problems are all going to disappear, and I'm going to make it so. So just enjoy your work. Love your work. That's how you'll do great work. All right? So now, I have to say, though, that heat trail that you create is very important. Even if someone is stealing credit for everything you do, they can't hide it forever. That heat trail eventually makes its way out. Someone asks the question, someone gets exposed. That person that steals credit for everything you do eventually has to do something by themselves, and they suck at it. And suddenly everyone goes, wait, why did that happen? It happens. So that's why you can't just do great work once and expect a big change, expect a big benefit. You have to do great work many times. And that's why you have to be patient. So because companies are not as smart as you and I are. They don't have a brain like we do. They don't see problems and solutions as fast as we do. Companies have a slow metabolism. You see, the companies are these big, dumb, lumbering animals. They don't have a brain and a nervous system. Companies are made up, their brain and nervous system, you know what it is? It's contracts and annual budget plans and things like this that take a long time to work themselves out before meaningful change can happen. So of course it takes a long time. Information has to pass from person to person in weekly meetings. Things go slowly in a company. That's just the nature of it. It doesn't matter what company you're in, they're all like that. That's reality. So don't be impatient with that process. Just know that's life. That's the nature of companies. So when you come up with an idea, it goes really fast. Super, super easy. You get your solution, it's easy. And it's sometimes frustrating. You have to wait for the company, which seems to take forever to get to a point where they finally understand. So anyway, don't fight it. Don't struggle with it. Eventually it will turn around. And I promise you will eventually succeed at this. You'll be able to fix it. So listen, I have now officially concluded the 5 things that professional creatives need. Well, 10 things actually. It should have been 20, but we'll get to those later. Maybe we'll write a book or something. Anyway, that's it. Thank you very much for listening to my droning on voice. And I think we have just a few minutes left, but maybe we can take some questions. Let's see, I have one here. Hold on one second. William Boggs says, what is your best advice for an experienced freelancer looking to transition into working for a company? One of the most common rejection reasons seems to be lack of professional experience. Okay, here's the deal. A lack of professional experience is a cop-out of an answer. I have to be honest. Whoever's telling you lack of professional experience, I'm so not impressed with that. Listen, a great artist is a great artist. You need a great portfolio. It comes down to, does your portfolio look professional? Does it look like, you can do lots of projects where you work for, you don't actually maybe work for a company. Let me put this another way. I've hired so many people who just do great work in their mom's basement because they have created great art and they've put together a brilliant portfolio that has a strong point of view. And I'm willing to hire somebody like that. And especially if you've got a great personality. I always say it's portfolio and personality. Those are the 2 things that I hire for. I don't care about your education. I don't care about your professional experience. That's all a bunch of, when I see a portfolio that's nothing but professional work they've done for clients, the truth is, I don't like that. I want to see who you are. I want to see your art. I want to see what gets you excited, because remember we were talking about the people who, directors, and inspiring the people, their creative voice to fill the space. Remember? Well, I want to know what kind of artist you really are, because that's what I'm going to try and facilitate. I'm going to try and get that person to create art. I don't want somebody that's just sort of a carbon copy, like, oh yeah, I can do Marlboro, or I can do Scope, or I can, it's like, I'm not that interested in that. I mean, it's a useful skill to have, to be able to sort of do whatever's required of you. Of course it is. And yet, where your passion lies is where you're going to do the best work. So I'm always going to support that. And I would recommend, William, that you look for companies that believe in that, because that's probably the best way you'll get. And also do what I said before about getting a job. Reach out to people whose work you admire and just talk to them. And eventually they'll see your work, and they'll be much more interested in bringing you on someday as a result. So I hope that answered your question. Let's see, we have another one here from anonymous attendee. There are like 20 people here with the same name. That's so weird. Please share best practices for unrealistic schedule and volume expectations from top management. Okay, best practices for unrealistic schedules. Well, the pat dumb answer is cheap, fast, and good, right? We always say cheap, fast, and good, pick 2. And that's kind of true. But when there's an unrealistic schedule, I mean, the reality is this. Schedules are often not based on what results in the best work. Schedules are often based on what the company needs you to do, because there's all sorts of other dynamics. Your job as a creative leader is going to be to really push back on that and find out what is really causing that thing. Is there an ad buy? and we've spent the money, and if we don't have something, we're going to lose all of that. Well, you better get that work done. I don't care what you do. You got to get that done. Although you need to couch that and say, next time we do this, you guys need to ask us first, and you need to be engaged and force your way into that machinery so that the next time you give them one out, okay? And then the next time they don't get to do that again, all right? So that's what I would say. As a creative leader, you really need to engage, and you need to push back on those tight deadlines to the degree that you can, and then ask them to engage with you next time so that doesn't happen again. We're all willing to do the hard work if we need to, do the best we can to get it to fit in the space, but if they keep ignoring you over time, then you have every right to just get really angry and fight these. What else? Could you recommend, this is Inigo, I think I pronounced that right. Maybe I didn't. Could you recommend an activity or exercise that would help in the unification of the visions of the creative and financial departments? Yeah, tricky, isn't it? Yeah, finance guys tend not to value a lot of the creative very high. Well, and again, this is a balancing act. Before, when I was talking about your role, and it looks like, folks, it looks like we might be going a little bit over in a few minutes, but I'll keep answering questions if you're still here. I'll keep going on. But let's see. So I was saying, yeah, so it's important that you're not unrealistic in a business sense. The finance people do have a point. Things have to be affordable, but you also have to learn how to speak to these folks, and you need to be able to say, look, when something is beautifully designed, that's like the first layer of marketing. Maybe we can take some money from the marketing budget and apply it to the design work. A beautifully designed object is going to sell itself better than a junky designed object that has good marketing. So it'll make the marketing job even easier. There are ways to sort of work the game a little bit. I don't know if I'm totally answering your question, but again, every project is a little bit different. It sort of depends on the specifics. But you do have to interact with these folks, and you do have to sort of, part of the challenge of being a creative leader is being able to talk to lots of different kinds of people and get them excited about being part of this thing. So I would say that's part of it. Let's see, we have a question here from Martina, who says, what would you do every day of your life if you didn't need the money? That's a pretty big question, because we all sort of need the money, don't we? Every day of my life, I'll be really honest with you, and this is super easy. Of course, we all fantasize about this, right? If you're just talking about me personally, I would tinker. I would be the world's worst tinkerer. I would have a big shop where I would have just all my tools and toys, and I would make stuff. And so I would have a few people working for me. If money's no object, I would have a few people working for me. We would make the weirdest, craziest, like mechanical puppets and stuff. Like I'd build a theme park. Okay, maybe that's a better answer, but it's all part of that tinkering. Let's see, here's another question from Mary. Any interesting trends you see for creatives in the education? Yeah, there's a big trend in education. Virtual reality. I think that VR is currently a bit clunky. We've got these big goggles. It's a little bit awkward, but the truth is VR is going to change everything. Today we look at things in a little box, and the truth of the matter is that's going to disappear. Next 5, I don't know, it's hard. It's an exponential medium, so it's hard to say whether it's going to be 2 years or 10 years. I don't know yet, but there's a point where VR is going to be low profile, easy to wear, and it's going to be so easy to do. And all of a sudden, being in virtual spaces is just going to explode, and it's going to change everything. That has huge implications for education, of course. And so starting to think about what VR means as a medium, as a new medium, I think it's really important for artists to start doing that, because no matter what kind of designer you are, you'll be designing in there, I promise. Let's see, can you share, this is Paulo, can you share some techniques you use to relinquish control over your team? Let's see, I lost it. Relinquish control over your team and be able to have the trust in the creative outcomes. Aha. So in other words, I have a vision, but I know that my team needs to be able to produce some work, and I need to encourage them to do it. So how do I encourage that or deal with it? Well, we talk a lot. We talk a lot, and we share things that we're inspired by. And I try and, as much as possible, when I work with creatives, I try and get them to talk about what they see, and that becomes in a platform that we can shape together. You need to be magnanimous. This can't be about your ego, and in many ways this can't even be about your vision. I always have a vision when I go into a project. I always have an idea in my head of how I want it to be. And then there's an organic process you go through with the people that you work with, and they add to it. And if you listen to them well, they will make the idea so much better. Like the actors who do a performance you couldn't have expected. Trust them. If you can't trust your designers to do great work, you have not hired good enough designers. All right? And that's a different problem. But so put the work into hiring really strong creative people, and they will add to your idea in ways that you can't imagine. Let's see, here's another one from Vincent. Hi, Joel, what's your best advice on creating sustainable creative career? I mean, because as a creative person, we tend to get quickly bored with repetitive work for a long time. Well, there are different ways to solve that. I've got lots of friends who work in agencies where the work changes a lot. The subject matter changes quite often. I actually got tired of that. I got tired of the subject matter changing quite often. I found that, there is, and I'll take one more question after this one. There's a type of project that you can do in about a 3 to 6 month window. And that's what most projects are. When you work with agency people, in the studio or agency world, clients come to you kind of at the last minute a little bit, and they say, oh, we need this. And you have about 3 months to understand the client, figure out what it is that they're really looking for, come up with a strategy and a solution for it, and then execute. It all has to happen within 3 months. And the truth is, you end up using your most knee-jerk responses. The best creatives in that world are people who you could probably lock in a closet with clay and nails and they would make something interesting, but they happen to be working on a dishwasher ad, So, those are the kind of people that do really well there. But what I found is that when you work on a project that's longer than that, like 6 to 12 months or even more, you hit a second level of understanding partway through. It's like at first you're excited. Hey, look, I can blow in this thing and it makes noise. At about 6 to 12 months, you start realizing that you can make music. You're not getting excited anymore about just the fact that, hey, I can kick the ball. You start playing sports and you get good at it. You understand the subject matter to a point where you can create even better work than you ever could have in that 3 month window. And I love that. It's the ability to polish. And that's why I'm in a company where our subject matter stays the same, but we work across so many different mediums and so many different form factors. And so our team, we're about maybe, I don't know, between 15 and 20 people usually, we end up working on all sorts of crazy stuff, sculptures and signage and websites and videos and like everything. Like there's no end to the change in our team. So I would say those are the sort of two ways you can work. You can work on situations where the subject matter changes quite often and where your discipline doesn't, or you can work in a place where the subject matter is pretty consistent and the materials you use all the time change a lot. So one more question and then we're done. Let's see, what do we have here? Here's a question. What would you do to a staffer who lost their spark at work and who you admire and reignite them? So in other words, I think you've got somebody who sort of lost their hope. And this comes from anonymous attendee. You've asked a lot of questions here today. So I've been through that a lot. I've been through it myself, where I've sort of lost my passion in the moment. And how do you regenerate that? And how do you help somebody regenerate that? The truth is, I have spoken honestly with that person. And it was actually hard because I almost wanted to fire that person, okay? I was to the point where they weren't performing, they were doing bad work, they were just a drain on the whole team, they were negative. And honestly, I wanted to fire that person. And I remember telling myself, that's not the right way to handle this. I've been through this enough. I was like, I need to talk to this person. So I sat the person down and I basically said, look, this is not working. And this is hard because you don't like having these conversations. Again, when you're a director, you gotta have, this is about people. You gotta have these uncomfortable conversations. You've got to, it's not an email. This is not something you just go, oh, hey, there's a text it off. It's like, you gotta sit down with this person and really connect with them emotionally and understand what they're going through. They could be going through some really terrible thing, or they're just sick of the work, but you've got to tell them what the problem is. There's a chance that that'll bring them down even further and send them away. But you know what? So be it. If they're not able to deal with that confrontation, that moment of truth, then maybe they shouldn't be there. But more often than not, when you're honest with these people and you really get to the root of what it is, and you're open and you're willing to hear them out, you'll probably find what it is that's got them. And I even told the person, I said, I almost fired you today. I told the person that, I almost fired you today. I'm not going to. I want to talk to you about it. And let me tell you what, that person blew up in the best way possible, became one of the most valuable contributors to the team, said, I am so grateful you said something to me. It was just a wake-up call, and it made me regain my passion in what I'm doing. And we also talked about having more control over the work that the person was doing. So I just want you to know, you got to be honest with these people and have these difficult conversations. That's part of what leading a creative team is. Well, folks, there are more questions here. There might be a way that I can answer these in text later. And if you send some more in, I'll do that. I'd be happy to. Anyway, I really appreciate you all being here. I think I'll hand it back to Lydia now, who can sign off. But it's been a pleasure, and I'm really glad you could all be here. So thank you very much.